You might have a few quarters in your wallet right now, but what if I told you that one of them could secretly be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars? That's right, today, we're diving deep into 4 Washington quarters that have shocked collectors with their hidden value and mysterious stories. These coins might look ordinary, but trust me, appearances can be deceiving. We'll begin with the 1988 quarter, a coin that holds some surprising secrets, followed by the 1992, 1990, and finally the 1983 quarter, which might just be the most talked about of them all. So stay with me till the end, because by the time we're done, you'll know exactly which of these old quarters could turn an everyday pocket find into a collector's jackpot. Let's start with our first coin in this series. You might have heard whispers that an ordinary 1988 Washington quarter could be worth a fortune. People talk about rare errors, high-grade versions, and even wild stories about coins selling for thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. At first, it sounds impossible. How can a coin that's just a few decades old and worth 25 cents suddenly become so valuable? But here's the truth. Behind every rumor, there's usually a reason. And today, we're diving deep into the story, the design, the history, and the real collector value of the 1988 Washington quarter, a coin that might look simple, but hides fascinating secrets. So stay with me till the very end, because by the time we're done, you might start checking your pocket change a lot more carefully. Let's rewind the clock a bit. The year was 1988. Ronald Reagan was the U.S. president, the Cold War was still ongoing, and the world was changing fast. In the middle of all that, millions of Washington quarters were being minted across the United States. Simple coins meant for daily transactions, vending machines, and pocket change. But little did anyone know that some of those quarters would later catch the eye of coin collectors worldwide. The Washington quarter had already become a classic by that time. First introduced in 1932 to honor the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, it replaced the standing Liberty quarter that had been circulating since 1916. The design came from sculptor John Flanagan, whose portrait of George Washington was based on a bust created by the French artist Jean-Antoine Houdon back in 1786. That same portrait remained on the quarter for decades, becoming one of the most recognized faces in U.S. coinage. And in 1988, that same design continued to grace the front, or as numismatists call it, the obverse of the coin. Now let's take a closer look at that obverse. You'll see George Washington's profile facing left, his expression calm but determined, capturing the dignity of America's first president. Across the top, the word Liberty arches proudly. Just to the left, the phrase, "In God we trust," appears, standing as a reminder of the nation's heritage. Beneath Washington's neck, at the bottom of the coin, lies the date, 1988, clear and bold. And just beside the ponytail ribbon in Washington's hair, you might spot a tiny letter, either A, P, D, or S. That's the mint mark, showing where the coin was struck. The P mint mark stands for Philadelphia, the D for Denver, and the S for San Francisco, which in this year mostly struck proof coins for collectors. Now flip the coin over to the reverse side, and you'll see a design that had been part of American history for decades, the famous bald eagle, the national bird and a symbol of strength and freedom. The eagle sits proudly with its wings outstretched, perched atop a bundle of arrows, representing defense, and an olive branch, which stands for peace. Above the eagle's head are the words United States of America, and below it, the Latin motto E pluribus unum, meaning out of many, one. At the bottom, of course, we see the denomination $quarter. Even though this design might seem simple today, in the 1980s it represented America's identity, strength, unity, and freedom, all captured on a small piece of metal that millions carried in their pockets every day. Now, let's talk about what these coins are made of, because that's where some confusion comes in. Many people still think older quarters are made of silver. And yes, before 1965, quarters did contain 90% silver. But by 1988, the U.S. Mint had long since switched to the copper-nickel-clad composition. That means each coin is made of an inner layer of pure copper, sandwiched between 2 outer layers of copper-nickel alloy. The total weight of the coin is 5.67 grams, and it has a diameter of 24.3 millimeters. So, unfortunately, there's no silver value in a 1988 quarter, but that doesn't mean it's worthless. In fact, for collectors, condition, mint mark, and rarity matter far more than the metal content. Let's start with the Philadelphia Mint, the 1988 P quarter. Philadelphia struck hundreds of millions of these coins, so finding one isn't difficult. However, finding one in perfect uncirculated condition is much harder. If you come across a regular circulated 1988 P quarter, it's usually worth about 25 to 50 cents. But if you find a coin that looks shiny and new, without scratches or wear, something that might grade MS-65 or higher, its value could jump to $10, $20, or even $50, depending on how pristine it is. Now let's move to the Denver Mint, marked by the small D. The 1988 D Washington quarter had an even larger mintage, but collectors prize coins that survived in perfect mint condition. A typical circulated 1988 D is also worth about face value, but in top-grade uncirculated condition, say MS-66 or MS-67, the price can go up to $100 or more at auction. One example, a 1988 D quarter graded MS-67 once sold for over $600, all because it was flawless, sharp, and well struck. These are the kinds of coins that make collectors excited, the ones that look like they just rolled out of the mint even after decades. Then we have the San Francisco Mint, the 1988 S-proof quarter. These coins were specially struck for collectors, using polished dies and carefully selected blanks to give them a mirror-like surface. They were never released into general circulation. A proof coin from 1988 can easily fetch $10 to $20, and if graded PR69 or PR70 by PCGS or NGC, it can sell for even higher amounts. But now let's talk about what really creates the buzz, the error coins. 1988 quarters with striking errors are rare, but they do exist, and when they do, their value skyrockets. Some of the known errors for this year include off-center strikes, where part of the design is missing or shifted. These can bring $50 to $200, depending on how dramatic the error is. Double die obverse, DDO errors, where you see doubling in the inscriptions like Liberty or In God We Trust. These are among the most sought after and can sell from $100 up to $400 or more depending on clarity. Clipped planchet errors, where a small piece of the coin's edge is missing, can also be worth $50 to $150. Struck on wrong planchet errors, where a quarter was accidentally struck on a planchet meant for another denomination, like a nickel or dime, are extremely rare and can go for hundreds or even thousands depending on the coin. And here's where those million-dollar rumors started. Some online posts and videos claimed that a few 1988 quarters sold for massive amounts, like $10,000 or more. In reality, those cases were almost always misunderstandings or mislabeled auctions. What really happened was that some high-grade coins or dramatic errors were auctioned for hundreds or a few $1,000s, and the news spread wildly online, often exaggerated by clickbait headlines. But even if we strip away the exaggeration, the truth remains. Some 1988 quarters are indeed valuable, not because of magic or luck, but because of their condition, rarity, and uniqueness. Let's dig a little deeper into the grading side of things. Coin grading is a professional process where experts evaluate a coin's condition using the Sheldon scale, which runs from 1 to 70. A coin graded MS-60 is uncirculated but might have noticeable marks. MS-65 is considered gem uncirculated, sharp and shiny with only minor imperfections. MS-67 or MS-68 are nearly flawless, showing full detail, perfect luster, and virtually no marks. These are the grades collectors dream of finding, and they can drastically change a coin's value. For example, a 1988 D quarter in MS-65 condition might sell for around $25, while an MS-67 could go for $600 or more, simply because of how perfect it looks. The jump in value is exponential as the grade increases. Now, here's something interesting for collectors. The 1988 quarter was part of the final stretch of the traditional Washington design before the Mint introduced the 50-state quarters program in 1999. That makes these late 1980s issues special. They represent the last era of the classic eagle reverse, which collectors now view as a historic design phase. Another detail to note, the quality control at the Mint in the late 1980s wasn't as consistent as today. This means some 1988 quarters show weak strikes or uneven surfaces, while others were struck beautifully with crisp detail. The better the strike, the more appealing it becomes to collectors. So, what's the reality behind those million-dollar 1988 quarter rumors? The honest answer, it's extremely unlikely to have a 1988 quarter worth anywhere near that much. However, if your coin happens to be a major error piece, or graded in near-perfect mint state, it can still be worth a small fortune, hundreds or even a few $1,000s in rare cases. The key takeaway is that these coins have potential. Every collector's dream starts with checking ordinary coins, and sometimes that's where extraordinary finds begin. So, if you have a 1988 quarter at home, take a good look at it under bright light. Examine the details, look for doubling in the letters, check for off-center strikes, and most importantly, see if it still has its mint luster. If it looks brand new or has something unusual, it might be worth having it professionally graded. At the end of the day, the 1988 Washington quarter tells a story, not just of money, but of history, artistry, and the thrill of discovery. It reminds us that even the smallest, most common coins can carry hidden value if you know what to look for. So, don't underestimate this humble quarter. Because who knows, maybe the next time you check your change, you might just be holding a little piece of treasure from 1988. Stay tuned, because up next, we'll be uncovering the secrets of our next coin, the 1992 Washington quarter, a coin that hides one of the most fascinating modern minting surprises ever discovered. Let's start our second coin in this series. You might think that a 1992 Washington quarter isn't anything special, just another coin you've probably spent countless times without even looking at it. But what if I told you that some 1992 quarters are among the most talked about modern coins in U.S. history, and a few have sold for jaw-dropping prices? Sounds impossible, right? Well, stick around, because before you toss that 1992 quarter back into your change jar, you need to hear this. Let's start with the whispers, the rumors you might have seen online. People claim that a few rare 1992 quarters have been found that are worth thousands, even tens of thousands of dollars. At first, it sounds like one of those exaggerated internet stories. But the truth is, some 1992 quarters really are valuable. The key lies in minting errors and transitional varieties that most people never notice. So let's dive deep and uncover the secret behind the 1992 Washington quarter, its history, design, value, and the truth behind those big money claims. The year was 1992, a time of transition and anticipation in the coin world. The U.S. Mint was just a few years away from launching one of the biggest changes in modern coinage history, the 50-state quarters program, which began in 1999. But before that era began, the Mint continued producing the traditional Washington quarter design that had been used for decades. This 1992 coin, then, was part of the final stretch of the classic Eagle Reverse series, one that would soon be replaced forever. Let's take a closer look. On the obverse, you'll see the familiar face of George Washington, designed by John Flanagan, just like all the quarters minted since 1932. Across the top is the word Liberty, bold and proud. To the left, you'll find the motto, In God We Trust, and right at the bottom, the date 1992. Beside Washington's ponytail, there's the tiny mint mark, P, D, or S, showing whether your coin was minted in Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco. Now flip it over to the reverse, and there it is, the majestic bald eagle, wings spread wide, perched on a bundle of arrows with an olive branch below, symbolizing both war and peace. Above it reads, United States of America, followed by E pluribus unum, Latin for, out of many, one. At the bottom, the denomination reads, quarter dollar. Even though this design was decades old by 1992, it remained timeless, a classic piece of American heritage. But here's where things get really interesting. You see, in 1992, the U.S. Mint was also producing silver-proof quarters for collector sets, coins made from 90% silver rather than the usual copper-nickel-clad metal used for circulation. These silver proofs were struck at the San Francisco Mint and carried the S mint mark. They were part of special collector sets only, never meant for pocket change. Now imagine this. What if a few of those silver-proof planchets somehow got mixed up and were struck as circulation coins? That's where things get exciting and valuable. There are known cases of transitional errors, where a coin was accidentally struck on the wrong metal planchet. If a 1992 quarter was struck on a silver planchet meant for proofs, it could easily be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars, depending on its condition and verification by professional graders. Even regular 1992 quarters have value potential, especially in high grades. Let's start with the 1992 P, minted in Philadelphia. Over 464 million of these coins were struck, so they're common in circulation. In used, circulated condition, it's generally worth its face value, 25 cents. But in uncirculated condition, With bright luster and no wear, the value can range from $3 to $15, and even higher for higher grades. A 1992 P-graded MS-67 has sold for around $500, and examples in top condition are rare because of how many were used daily. Next is the 1992 D from the Denver Mint. Denver produced about 389 million quarters that year. Again, a massive number. Circulated pieces are worth face value, but in uncirculated condition, they can sell for $5 to $25. High-grade coins, such as an MS-67 1992 D, have sold for over $600, depending on strike quality and eye appeal. Then, we have the 1992 S-proof quarters, and this is where things get truly collectible. The San Francisco Mint struck 2,858,981 proof coins in 1992, including both copper-nickel proofs and 90% silver proofs for collectors. These coins were sold in special mint sets, featuring a mirror-like surface and frosted design. A 1992 S-clad proof is typically worth $5 to $10, but the 1992 S-silver proof quarter is far more desirable, often selling for $10 to $20, and much higher if graded PR70, a perfect proof, by PCGS or NGC. But let's not stop there, because this coin's fame goes beyond normal mintage and condition. One of the most talked about discoveries related to the 1992 quarter is the 1992 silver proof error, a regular design quarter accidentally struck on a silver planchet. These transitional errors have been authenticated and sold at major auctions, sometimes fetching prices of $1,000 to $2,000 or more. And there are even more types of errors that make 1992 quarters collectible. Double die errors, where letters or numbers appear slightly doubled. These can be worth anywhere from $50 to $300. Off-center strikes, where part of the design is missing or misaligned. Depending on the degree, these can bring in $100 to $250. Clipped planchets, die cracks, or struck-through errors. Each of these unique mistakes adds character and value to the coin. But now, let's address the biggest rumor, the claim that some 1992 quarters are worth tens of thousands or even millions of dollars. So, is it true? Well, partially. Most of those stories trace back to listings for extremely rare proof coins or misidentified silver errors. For example, a 1992 S silver proof in PR70 Deep Cameo might sell for $80 to $150. Impressive, but not millions. However, a genuine 1992 P or 1992 D struck on a 90% silver planchet could sell for thousands, because it's an unintentional error. And that's the kind of thing that sparks those million-dollar headlines, a real but rare story that spreads across the internet and grows in size with every share. To be clear, if you have a regular 1992 quarter, it's most likely worth 25 cents. But if your coin looks different, lighter in color, has a ringing silver sound, or lacks a copper edge when viewed from the side, then you might just have something special. Here's how to check. Hold the coin's edge under good light. A normal 1992 quarter will show a brownish copper line along the edge. That's the copper core. But a silver proof or error quarter will look solid silver all around. That's the first clue that it could be something valuable. Now, beyond the metal composition, grading also plays a massive role. Coins with sharp detail, full luster, and zero scratches can be worth many times more than average ones. Collectors pay premium prices for coins graded MS-67 or higher, and since only a tiny percentage of coins survive in that condition, the demand is strong. For example, a 1992 DMS-67 quarter once sold for $600. A 1992 PMS-67 brought in around $500. And a 1992 S-silver proof PR70 sold for more than $100. Let's start our third coin in our today's series. You might have heard people saying that the 1990 Washington quarter could be worth thousands of dollars, or even more. Some claim it's one of those hidden treasure coins that could turn ordinary pocket change into serious money. But how much truth is there to that? Well, stay with me till the very end, because we're going to uncover everything about this fascinating coin, its history, design, hidden details, and what makes certain 1990 quarters so valuable that collectors are willing to pay hundreds, sometimes even thousands of dollars. Now, let's go back to 1990, a time when the Washington quarter had already been a familiar face for over half a century. This coin was part of the long-running series that started in 1932, honoring America's first president, George Washington, whose image had become a true symbol of national pride. The design came from John Flanagan, and although decades had passed, the same design was still being used, making the 1990 issue one of the last classic quarters before the major design changes of the late 1990s. On the obverse side, the 1990 quarter features that proud and detailed portrait of George Washington facing left. Above him, the bold word Liberty stretches across the top, symbolizing the foundation of the nation. To the left, you'll see the motto "In God We Trust," and right beneath Washington's bust lies the year, 1990. But there's a small detail many people overlook, the mint mark. It appears just next to Washington's ponytail. It could be AP for Philadelphia, AD for Denver, or an S for San Francisco. These tiny letters make a huge difference because they tell us where the coin was made, and sometimes that's the key to its value. If you flip the coin, the reverse side features a majestic American eagle with its wings spread wide. The eagle is perched on a bundle of arrows, a symbol of strength and defense, resting above an olive branch that represents peace. Surrounding it are the words United States of America and E pluribus unum, meaning out of many, one. At the bottom, you'll see $quarter, showing its denomination. This design was used for decades before the Mint introduced the new 50-state quarter series in 1999. Now, let's talk about what this coin is made of. By 1990, quarters were no longer silver, and hadn't been since 1965. Instead, they were made of a copper-nickel-clad composition, with a pure copper core and outer layers of nickel. This makes them durable, but it also means that their metal value is worth less than a quarter, so the real value comes from condition, rarity, and minting errors. The Philadelphia Mint struck around 613 million quarters in 1990, while the Denver Mint produced more than 927 million. That's well over 1.5 billion coins, so on paper, they're not rare. But here's where things get interesting. Even among billions of coins, a few rare examples stand out due to quality, minting mistakes, and preservation. Let's start with the circulated 1990 quarters, the kind you might find in your pocket. These are generally worth just 25 to 50 cents. But when we move into uncirculated condition, that's when collectors start paying attention. An MS-60 grade coin might fetch $2 to $5, while MS-65 can reach around $15 to $25. However, the jump from MS-65 to MS-67 is huge. A 1990 D-quarter graded MS-67, near perfect condition with full mint luster and almost no marks, has sold for $500 to $700 at major auctions. Similarly, a 1990 P-quarter in the same grade can go for $400 or more, depending on its strike quality. These high-grade coins are extremely difficult to find because most quarters from that era went straight into circulation. Now, let's talk about something that gets collectors really excited: errors and varieties. Some 1990 quarters have been found with double-die errors, where parts of the design, like the word Liberty or In God We Trust, appear slightly doubled. Depending on the strength of the doubling, these coins can be worth anywhere from $100 to $300. Another known error type is the off-center strike, where the design isn't perfectly centered on the coin. The more off-center it is, the higher the value, with some going for $50 to $200. Then there's the rare clipped planchet error, where a small portion of the coin's edge is missing because of a mistake during the cutting process at the mint. These unique coins can fetch $75 to $150, sometimes more if the clip is obvious. Collectors also look out for proof coins, specifically the 1990 S-proof quarters from the San Francisco Mint. These coins were never meant for circulation. They were specially struck using polished dies and planchets to create a mirror-like surface and sharp details. A 1990 S-proof quarter in PR69 or PR70 deep cameo grade can sell for $20 to $40, and they're beautiful pieces to have in any collection. Now, here's something interesting that many people don't realize. Some proof quarters from 1990 were made with no S mint mark due to a minting mistake. This no S proof variety is extremely rare, and when discovered, it caused quite a buzz among collectors. These error-proof coins can sell for hundreds to thousands of dollars, depending on their condition. If you ever come across a 1990 quarter that looks proof-like but doesn't have an S mint mark, handle it carefully. It could be one of the valuable ones. So, are the rumors true? Can the 1990 Washington quarter really make you rich? Well, here's the honest answer. Most 1990 quarters are worth only face value. But a flawless high-grade example, a dramatic mint error, or a rare proof variety can absolutely be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. And that's what makes this coin so exciting. Among billions of regular strikes, there could still be a hidden gem out there, sitting unnoticed in someone's change jar, waiting for the right collector to recognize its value. Beyond its worth, the 1990 quarter represents the end of an era. It's one of the final years before the U.S. Mint changed the quarter's design completely with the launch of the State Quarters series. That makes it not just a coin, but a piece of history, a reminder of America's classic design before modern changes took over. So the next time you come across a 1990 Washington quarter, don't just glance and spend it. Look closely at every detail, the mint mark, the lettering, the date, the shine. Because if you find one in perfect mint state, or with an unusual error, you might be holding something much rarer than you think. And who knows? That little 25-cent coin in your hand could turn out to be worth hundreds, maybe even thousands, if it's the right one. So keep your eyes open, because treasures like this are still out there, hiding in plain sight. Up next, we'll move to our final coin, the 1983 Washington quarter, and trust me, this one carries a surprising story that even experienced collectors often overlook. Now let's move to the last coin in our today's series, which is surrounded by the rumors floating around that a simple 1983 Washington quarter, the kind that looks completely ordinary, could actually be worth thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars. Sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? But what if I told you that some 1983 quarters really have sold for shocking prices? Before you rush to check your pocket change, stay with me till the very end, because today we're going to uncover the truth, the history, and the real story behind this intriguing coin, the 1983 Washington quarter, one of the most talked about quarters of the 1980s. Let's start from the beginning. The 1983 Washington quarter comes from the same series that began back in 1932, designed by John Flanagan to honor the 200th birthday of George Washington. The design remained almost unchanged for decades, and by 1983, it had already become a timeless American classic. On the obverse side, you'll find the detailed portrait of George Washington facing left, calm, confident, and dignified. The word liberty arches above his head, while "In God We Trust" is inscribed to the left. At the bottom sits the date, 1983, marking the year this quarter was struck. Just beside Washington's neck, there's a small mint mark that tells you where your coin was made. It could be AP for Philadelphia or AD for Denver. There was no San Francisco S mint mark for regular quarters that year because 1983 proof quarters were never produced, and that's one of the key reasons why 1983 quarters are so interesting and valuable to collectors. Now, flipping to the reverse side, we see one of the most elegant designs ever used on U.S. coinage, the American bald eagle with its wings spread wide, perched proudly on a bundle of arrows with olive branches beneath it. The inscriptions United States of America and E pluribus unum are placed above the eagle, while quarter dollar appears at the bottom. It's simple, it's patriotic, and it's one of the longest-running reverse designs in U.S. history. By 1983, quarters were made from a copper-nickel-clad composition, consisting of an inner copper core with outer layers of nickel. There was no silver, but that doesn't mean these coins have no value. In fact, some 1983 quarters have proven to be worth far more than their face value. Now, let's talk about something crucial that sets the 1983 quarter apart. The U.S. Mint did not issue any official mint sets or uncirculated sets in 1982 or 1983. That means there were no special collector sets produced those years, and almost every 1983 quarter went straight into circulation. Because of that, finding a 1983 quarter in mint condition is surprisingly difficult. The few that survived in pristine shape are now worth serious money. Let's look at the mintage numbers. The Philadelphia Mint struck around 673 million quarters in 1983, and the Denver Mint produced about 617 million. Those numbers seem huge, but remember, nearly all of them were spent, scratched, and worn down through regular use. So what does that mean for value? A regular, circulated 1983 quarter, the kind you'd find in pocket change, is generally worth around 25 cents. Maybe 50 cents to $1 if it's in slightly better shape. But if you find one that looks brand new, no scratches, strong shine, and full details, it could be worth $10 to $25, even without being professionally graded. However, once we step into high-grade, professionally graded coins, the value can rise dramatically. A 1983 P quarter graded MS66 by PCGS or NGC can sell for around $250 to $400. The 1983 D version in the same grade can reach $300 to $500, depending on eye appeal and strike quality. And here's where things get really exciting. An exceptionally high-grade 1983 D Washington quarter graded MS67 once sold for over $1,400 at auction. And that's not even the most shocking part. A 1983 P quarter graded MS67 Plus with perfect luster and strike reportedly reached values near $2,000 in private sales. That's right, a simple, everyday 25-cent coin turning into thousands of dollars just because it was preserved in flawless condition. But it doesn't end there. Some 1983 quarters also feature rare minting errors, and these can make them even more valuable. Collectors have found off-center strikes, where the design isn't perfectly aligned, worth anywhere between $100 and $300, depending on how much of the design is missing. There are also double-die errors, where the letters or date show a doubled image. These are extremely rare for 1983 quarters, but if you find one, it could be worth $500 or more, especially if the doubling is clear and strong. Another interesting and valuable error is the clipped planchet error, where part of the coin's edge is missing due to a minting mistake. Depending on the severity, these coins can sell for $75 to $200. And here's one more fascinating detail. Some 1983 quarters were struck on experimental planchets or planchets intended for other denominations. These major mint errors are very rare and can fetch thousands of dollars when discovered. But now let's talk about the million-dollar rumors that have made the 1983 quarter so famous online. Many viral posts claim that the 1983 quarter could be worth millions, but that's not true. Most of those claims are exaggerated or based on confusion with high-grade or error examples that sold for large amounts. While it's true that a few special 1983 quarters have sold for thousands, number 1983 quarter has ever sold for anywhere near $1 million. Still, the real reason this coin is so respected by collectors is its scarcity in high grades. Because so few were saved from circulation, finding one in mint state condition today is like finding a needle in a haystack. And that scarcity is what gives it value. To this day, coin collectors are still searching rolls of quarters, hoping to find a well-preserved 1983 example, one that escaped the wear and tear of everyday use. And every once in a while, someone gets lucky and finds a gem. So the truth is, yes, a 1983 Washington quarter can be worth good money. Not millions, but in top condition or with a rare error, it can be worth hundreds or even a few $1,000s. And that's enough to make anyone take a second look at the change in their pocket. The 1983 quarter represents an important piece of American coinage history. It reminds us that sometimes, the real treasures aren't the rarest coins by mintage, but the ones that survived against the odds. So, before you spend that 1983 quarter, stop and take a closer look. If it shines like new, if the details are sharp, or if something about it looks just a little different, it might be worth far more than 25 cents. Because in the world of coins, the difference between ordinary and extraordinary can be as small as a mint mark, or as big as a fortune.